Hi, and thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share with you guys a little bit more about the Ellis Center and the topic of deafblindness. We here at Ellis Center have some good experience in this topic and in serving individuals with deafblindness here in our community, and we're really excited to be able to share that with you guys today. My name is Alison Caputo. I am the Executive Director at Ellis Center. And we'll talk a little bit about Ellis, but I am one of the founders of Ellis Center, and we've been around for about 10 years, but I'll share a little bit more with you now. Ellis Center was founded, as I mentioned, by my husband and myself about 10 years ago, where in those early days, we were, well, as first-time parents, we had our first son, Damien, and he was born with multiple and complex disabilities. He had a number of medical needs at birth, and one of the issues was that his vision and his hearing were both impacted at the time he was born, as well as other disabilities that came about that unfolded over the years. And in those early years of navigating our life as special needs parents, we heard from so many about the, things ahead and the difficulties that we were going to endure with our child and what he was not going to be able to do, all the milestones that he would miss, etc. And we were pretty discouraged about, what was going to be possible for our child. We also felt like, okay, once we enter the public school system, perhaps we would have some additional support and have, professionals that were up to speed on special education and all of the different supports that were needed. And unfortunately, we found that in particular with this low incidence disability and deafblindness, we found that that was not something they were very capable of doing. And that customized level of support was really not something they dealt with very often. We also then in 2012 stepped back and said, okay, what do we need to do in order for our child, his educational and developmental needs to be met? We began stepping away from the public school system by starting our own, what we thought at the time might be a small homeschool type program. And when we saw the success and the change in our child by providing exactly the supports he needed, we recognized the power that we could really expand this out to other kids in our community, really focusing on what is possible. So our small school program grew, expanded. We welcomed in other students, became a nonprofit organization that now today offers a variety of programs and support services, not just to individuals with deafblindness, but with children who have multiple and complex disabilities, and in particular, communication dysfunction. So we have been here in Atlanta for over 10 years now as subject matter experts in the area of deafblindness and complex disabilities. As a nonprofit, our mission statement is to nurture lifelong learners, connecting them to their community, and again, focusing on what is possible. And that mission statement is part of what we do every day for all of our programs, whether it's through our camp programs or other types of programs that we offer here beyond just the school program. So who we serve, kind of the primary individual that we serve at Ellis Center, are non-speaking or nonverbal children between ages 5 to 22. So that does not mean that they don't have verbal speech or some vocalizations. However, verbal speech is not their most effective or efficient way to communicate. So that means they need other alternative systems or augmentative communication to augment what they already have. That can look like sign language, that can look like high-tech or low-tech communication devices, something like an iPad, etc., as well as it could also include other communication supports, pictures, photographs, object symbols, the whole array. Also here at Ellis, although it's not a requirement, we just run into this a lot, that a lot of our students that we serve and campers we serve have some additional sensory impairments, either vision or hearing, or in combination both, which qualifies them as deafblind. We get a lot of that, and that's really relevant to those kids that have a lot going on. So I'll speak more about that later, but in addition, just really kind of kids with multiple and complex disabilities, again, ages 5 to 22. And we do support kids that have behavior needs. However, we are not a program that is designed specifically for a heavy behavioral overlay for the kids that we do serve on a day-to-day basis. That's always just kind of a conversation with families or with the individuals we serve. So Ellis has essentially 4 primary programs. Of course, our school program is where we got our start, providing educational services. And we have a couple of different components. We have a full-time year-round school program. We even have an intensive summer program, our ESY program. We're a small independent private school here in Atlanta, providing all levels of academics and support, therapeutic supports, etc., into an integrated school program. Also, a program we're known for, pretty popular, is our Camp Impact program. I'm going to jump down to the bottom of the slide, where our summer camp program is separate of the school. It's a day camp. And it is 1 week out of the summer in July, typically each year. But again, it's the same population that we're serving, generally kids who are non-speaking, nonverbal, and might have complex communication systems or don't have a communication system yet and are emerging and trying to identify what modalities they are using to for expressive communication. So camp is fun, it's social, it's just a blast, and that's a program that we have kids from all over the country come and attend. Other programs include our community education events. Those are opportunities for individuals in the community here, so it's open to the public. Anybody that would like to come and learn about some of the kind of niche topics that we deal with here at Ellis Center and working with individuals with communication dysfunction, kind of really complex needs. In particular, we get into a lot of topics around vision impairment for whatever reason, and it seems to be a need in our community. So that is an opportunity for parents, therapists, teachers, administrators, agency members to come and learn and then take that information back with them to the caseloads or individuals that they serve broadly. And we have found that to be quite a success. As lastly, I'll mention is our evaluation services. We offer a pretty wide array of different types of evaluation, specialized evaluation services to members of the community. Again, these are generally more focused on educational settings or community settings. We do have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language pathology, all of those types of evaluations. However, they're not insurance paid or healthcare or clinical type evaluations that you might find elsewhere. It is intended to be more of a functional setting. All right. And then kind of what makes Ellis Center a little bit different. Some of our values really kind of speak for the population that we serve and how important it is for us to work with one another. We have an absolute unconditional belief in the kids that we serve and their population, or excuse me, their potential. And we find that through developing a child-led curriculum for them helps encourage engagement and communication, which is what we're after. Also, we offer one-on-one support for all of our students and campers. That means that those communication attempts are heard and honored in real time, and all of the supports that are necessary. And today, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about deafblindness, but here at Ellis, we refer to those individuals as interveners. They are providing access to each child's environment and communication each step of the way. And lastly, of course, is our amazing team of multidisciplinary professionals. We have learned that when we come together as a group and share our knowledge and experience, our impact to our students and our campers and those that we serve through our other programs is multiplied. And that instead of working in our professional silos, kind of come together and work as a group. And that's where we really see the magic happen. So some ways that Ellis Center can help you, just keep in mind that anyone you might work with that is looking for an alternative to a school program, we do offer a variety of educational services. Of course, camp is a great way to send any campers, again, ages 5 to 22 for camp, that might be non-speaking or nonverbal or use high-tech or low-tech communication systems, would be absolutely welcomed at camp. You can attend a community education event each spring, or utilize any of our evaluation services. And one in particular that we get asked to do a lot is multidisciplinary evaluations, where we have a team of service providers that come together for our most complex individuals that we serve in our evaluation services. Really gives a much more well-rounded viewpoint on these kids and individuals that don't meet more standardized testing. So regarding deafblindness, kind of giving you guys a quick overview of what deafblindness is and some of the supports that are recommended. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what it means to be deafblind. What is the definition? So deafblindness at its root is a disability of access, right? It's I cannot access my visual or auditory environment in the same way that a typical individual does because of some combination of hearing and vision impairment combined. So a really important thing to think about here is an individual does not have to have complete hearing impairment. They do not have to be profoundly deaf, nor do they have to be completely blind or visually impaired to be considered deafblind. What is most common is a wide variety of a little bit of some and some of the other. So it's that combo that is really the most important thing to kind of think about and how unique and individualized that is. So another component of that is to not imagine that because a person has hearing aids or has a white cane that enables them to be more independent or utilize those aids, that suddenly makes them no longer deafblind. They absolutely are still deafblind with or without those supports and equipment. And just to give kind of some scale to what we're talking about here with deafblindness, there is over 15 million people in the world with deafblindness. And if you were to take that number, it's kind of the combo of all of Sweden and Norway put together. It's a lot of people. And the other thing to think about here is that number probably does not really accurately represent, especially the more senior adult range of individuals who perhaps they're an adult with a vision impairment, and as they age, begin to encounter hearing impairment. That individual then starts to move into that eligibility of deafblind and really requires perhaps a different level of support than they might have been used to as a person with only a vision impairment. And so that number isn't even probably really accurately included in this estimate. So that number could be quite larger. And here in Georgia, we estimate about 1,400 individuals are, again, not necessarily those that are that senior adult age range, but at least 1,400 individuals with deafblindness, of which 25% are children. And we're seeing that more commonly, that children are often having this condition as well here with the advancement of medical support in young babies. So one of the most important components of serving an individual with deafblindness is to provide what's referred to as an intervener. And an intervener, by definition, has two primary pieces. One is that they are working in a one-to-one capacity, one-to-one, not two-to-one, but one-to-one, and with an individual who is deafblind, and that this intervener has very specific training and specialized skills related to deafblindness. And we're going to talk about what that looks like in just a second. So we use that term intervener specifically for the deafblind population. And so the three primary roles of an intervener that they are tasked with providing support to an individual with deafblindness includes, first and foremost, access to their environment, right? We talked about deafblindness being a disability of access. That is exactly what an intervener does, is they are a bridge. They are providing access to environmental information that generally a typical individual is able to access by looking or hearing. They can hear that fire engine roll down the street with its sirens on. They can see the sirens lit up, or the lights lit up. And so an individual with deafblindness might have not the whole picture. They might have heard parts of that or saw components of it, but maybe didn't get a full picture of what just happened. And that lack of incidental learning is exactly why an intervener is so important. Secondly, an intervener's role is to really focus on communication, not just providing access to communication, which is super important, but also to help continue to develop that individual's receptive or expressive communication skills. And again, juggling all those different modalities. They might be providing tactile sign language, they might be providing access to a high-tech communication device, all simultaneously. And then lastly, which cannot be underestimated, is the relationship that goes on between an intervener and an individual with deafblindness. Deafblind individuals experience the world so differently, and it can be very frightening. It can be very spontaneous and unpredictable. And by having that layer of trust and support with somebody that they know they can feel safe with and understands their needs fully, enables them to be more successful at their job, more successful in their relationships, and more successful in their learning, and other areas of their life, like activities of daily living and mobility, etc. So what does proper training look like for an intervener? What should it include? And part of the struggle here is that because this is a role that is often not talked about, or not, awareness is not even there. Many other service providers, such as direct service professionals and paraprofessionals, are often put into this position without the proper training. We know that those individuals might have received certifications through their various professional associations for a different set of skills, but have not necessarily been trained in deafblindness specifically. So that's why an intervener is a step a little bit different or above, because of that additional training that's provided. And we advocate for a national intervener credential here at Ellis Center, to be utilized so that there is a level or a foundational requirement for interveners to have that training. And there's a number of different universities that provide this, which we'll go into in just a second, but really at its heart, it includes 8 credit hours or educational hours of coursework through an accredited program that's inclusive typically of a practicum course, including an intervener portfolio. And unfortunately, as we all know, state requirements vary from state to state. So this has been a national effort, but continues to be a struggle at the state level. Many states, including Georgia, do not necessarily recognize an intervener as having a specific, job description, or acknowledges that credential. But at the foundational level, when offering proper support to an individual with deafblindness, it is so key that they have an individual that has been properly trained. So training programs are available through a couple of different universities, including Utah State University and Central Michigan University. Those 2 universities have programs that can be taken remotely. You do not have to be in attendance in person to take advantage of these. And in fact, intervener training also typically occurs during employment when that intervener is working directly with an individual with deafblindness. That could be in a school setting, in a community setting, or elsewhere, because they're getting on-the-job experience with an individual with deafblindness while they're simultaneously taking this coursework. And that is how folks that are doing these training efforts nationally have found it to be most successful. So I will just quickly mention here under these other resources here, When you do a Google search on intervener training, you might run into something called the Open Hands, Open Access intervener learning modules. Please note that they're great. They're a great resource. However, they are not a certified training program. They do not lead to the intervener credential. So make sure that if anyone utilizing those modules does not incorrectly misrepresent their level of training by simply having logged on and read and watched some of those videos. I'll also mention that the Georgia Sensory Assistance Project is a local agency here in Georgia. They predominantly work with birth to 22 age group for individuals with deafblindness and supports in the educational and early intervention settings. So they can be found online as well. So when we think about how to work with an individual with deafblindness specifically, one of the things I do want to mention is that the typical example that most people kind of come to mind when they think about an individual with deafblindness, who do we all know? Helen Keller, right? She is a historical figure. Her intervener, if you will, Annie Sullivan, who helped support her. That is kind of this generic idea of completely deaf, completely blind, and no other perhaps disabilities or other involvement. And so what I challenge you with today is to really think beyond that, because that is the population that we most commonly work with, and that is what we would call deafblind plus. Those are individuals who are deafblind that have other disabling conditions, so other physical or medical needs. And I think the statistic is really relevant that 85% of individuals who have deafblindness have other additional disabilities. And of those, 50% have complex healthcare needs. So there's a lot going on for these individuals with deafblindness, which further underscores really the need for proper support, including the use of an intervener. So service delivery for an individual with deafblindness, of course, should include an intervener as consistently as possible. Even for adults and individuals in the community, making sure that those interveners are there for the times of their day or their life that are the most difficult for them, including things like community mobility, including, say, jobs or career settings, as well as educational settings, and that they be there consistently and not a rotating door of different people, but a consistent intervener support persons or a small team to support them. That communication support cannot be underestimated. So complex with kids and adults with these types of communication dysfunction. There's such a wide variety of modalities that are needed, and being able to flex between multiple communication systems, because you cannot use a high-tech communication device while you're at the beach or in the pool. So you have to have other types of supports, and that's how life is, and communication is messy. So we need that kind of support for our individuals with deafblindness. Also, the integration of high-tech supports to help support career, mobility, activities of daily living. There's so many things that are emerging in this area. Assistive technology has come a long way, and the idea of no tech supports is really very antiquated, and really have to press the threshold for these individuals that are so benefited by having technology as part of their everyday lives. So, kind of best practices when communicating with an individual who is deafblind. First and foremost is consider patience. I think we as verbal communicators tend to talk really fast, that we might ask a question multiple times, not really giving the individual time to respond and process and take in. Again, they're experiencing access issues. They might not be able to hear or see you completely, and they need more time to do that. And they might respond back to you in a way that is different than you might expect. They also, tactile support is really important, kind of that getting close to that person, and upon consent, perhaps using touch or other tactile strategies. So it's really important to think a little bit differently when working with an individual with deafblindness. Just knowing that they communicate in varying ways might, just because they have sign language skills, they might not be able to use sign languages in all settings. They might fluctuate between using some sign language, some high-tech device, some body movements, some gestures, etc., to communicate their point. As I said before, be patient and just know that every deafblind person is so different from the next, and the way that they communicate varies dramatically. And thinking about deafblindness in the workplace, of course, we all understand and appreciate that having individuals with disabilities in the workplace really helps to build a diverse workforce. We find that individuals with deafblindness have a really unique perspective on the world and on working with other members of the public. And the use of a credentialed intervener really ensures success for deafblind individuals. They are, again, that bridge or that connection to allowing that individual with deafblindness to be able to be successful. In the educational setting, oftentimes there are supports that are available, but what we often find is that the level of knowledge and skill necessary on this low incidence population is not commonly found in our public schools. You might be fortunate to find a teacher or a specialist here and there that really gets this, but because it is very uncommon and you end up having teams of individuals that kind of work in their separate silos, deafblindness is both things together. And oftentimes, as we talked about, a lot of things going on for a complex kiddo. And so we find that it is very difficult to implement proper strategies and supports for deafblind students in most typical public schools, which is why Ellis got its start. Change really starts with us and how we work with individuals with deafblindness. It's less about them and more about how we change our perspective, how we have to take the patience and the time to really get and observe and understand in whatever setting you're in with an individual with deafblindness, that's really the best way to understand them, is to get to know them and understand what their unique and very different needs are from individual to individual. Just some other resources we mentioned here along the way, I will leave up here on the screen for just a second, as well as you can always get in touch with Ellis Center. We're very active on social media, as well as our website is kept up to date pretty frequently. So we encourage you to go there, stay up to date with our events and other programs. And of course, if we can be a resource to you or anyone in your network, we are happy to help. Thank you guys so much, and we appreciate your time today.